Morning, everyone. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad that you guys could join us today. So we're going to be quickly demoing something that we've sneak peeked a little bit yesterday in a product we call QAI. Obviously, this features Ontology's SDK and how kind of the partnership between Lennar and Palantir has gone on this past year for me. So I'll start us off by obviously giving you guys a little bit of a refresher. My name is Joe Alvarez. I'm a data scientist at Lennar's emerging tech team.
I'm Aran Witkan. I'm the product manager of OSDK.
And to give you a little bit of background of who we are and what we do, Lennar is one of the largest home builders in America, and we're on pace to deliver about 80,000 homes this year. That goes across 26 different states. As you can imagine, 80,000 homes, 26 different states. There's quite a bit of municipalities and rules and a lot of differentiation that goes into our data. And you can imagine that data is often even siloed in some of these situations in different divisions. So it's very, very difficult. And having Palantir on our side has really helped kind of unify some of our data structures and make sure that we make some really cool applications along the way as well. So let's get a little bit into how we've started this process. Again, a little bit of a refresher from yesterday. So we started by really going into creating an ontology layer and getting kind of the fundamental practices together before we built this. Granted, I've only been working on Palantir for a little bit less than a year because that's how long I've been at Lennar, but that's really how it's been, starting from the very beginning and getting foundations right so that we can start building and start building well. Once we get all that together, we started kind of thinking about how we can start making some cost savings and start impacting the business and sometimes even in boots on the ground influence. So we went ahead and took some of the Palantir folks on a trip with us to a job site. We really wanted them to understand what our business is. It's kind of difficult if your job is to build these products and connect Ontology, which is almost like a business layer, to what you're doing without actually understanding the business. So it obviously helped, and it's some fun, obviously, get away from the office every once in a blue moon. So Scott, our CTO, he came in and he's inspired us to really like drive Palantir and drive kind of this innovation forward into being more of a tech company that builds homes. And in doing so, we made some pretty lasting impacts, even just going in real quick. So if you look at the quote that we have, it's very simple. We're impacting about $2.5 to $8 million per each community. As you can imagine, 80,000 homes, that's still quite a bit of communities. And we did that in about 51 days using Palantir. So it was a really, really big success story. And we're really, really glad to have this partnership with Palantir going forward. So before I get too much into the demo and kind of try and wow you guys as much as I can, I'm going to hand it over to my friend here, and he's going to tell you a little bit about the OSDK.
So I hope that by now you all know about OSDK, but I think what Lennar was doing with, or is doing with OSDK is really taking it to the limit. We're going to see here how they're using both TypeScript, the TypeScript language in the client and public client OSDK, running on a native app like React Native, and talking to a compute module that is using the Python SDK to talk to the ontology. And I think if we were taking all of that app and putting it in here in the award competition, it will win. So let's see how it goes.
I appreciate it. So I'll just go right into it and I'll show you guys. Before I get started, though, I want to give you some preface, actually, because realistically, you guys have no idea what it's like to be a home builder. So I want you all to put yourselves in the shoes of a QA manager. Your job is to go through and ensure that the home that you're about to deliver to our customer base is spotless, ready. It would be a home you want to move into. So along that path, you have to take care of 250 different inspection points for that home alone. That process right now takes you 3 hours. So one home, 250, and 3 hours. You can imagine very quickly how over 80,000 homes that we have on pace to deliver, it's going to be a lot of man hours and a lot of time that gets put into this, and time, as we all know at this point, is money. So the best part that I can think about this is, now that you're going through, you're taking pictures and you're scribbling notes down on an iPad, those two things are disjointed from one another, right? So you take a picture, you write some notes, you take a picture, you write some notes, and sometimes houses have multiple defects. It's not going to be as cut and clean as some people may think. There's a lot of little things, and I mean little things. I personally went on an inspection, and when you go and look through the inspection, it is minute. A little bit of stucco is off, and we are taking a picture and we're reporting it. Because we do want that home to be spotless and perfect for when our customer walks in. So through that process, super manual, and the data is disjointed. So now you have to come back, now that you've finished the home, and find out off the top of your head still, what in your notes matches to your pictures and what kind of form you have. And you're going to put that in Excel and export that to a PDF and hand that off to someone. And it's a very manual process. Now someone has to go and call someone to come and fix it. There's a lot that goes into this, and a lot of time that can be saved. So I'll go ahead and show you what it's like for some of our partners now. And I think you guys will enjoy it. So let me pull that up for you guys. So you can all see my screen, everything's cool. So this is what you would see if you were that QA manager. So let's step into the QA manager's shoes again. We come in and we see this large sheet, and we have all of these forms that have been created. We have lot numbers, communities, descriptions. We can see failed, we can see passed, we can see everything that's happening maybe within our specific community. So we come over here and we're gonna start our home. Before we ever walk in, all we're gonna do is we're gonna select what home we have. So we say what division we're in, we talk about the communities, and then we select the lot number. Super simple so far. We're gonna hit create. And what's happening now is that a form is being created within the ontology for that specific home. So cool. We now have a form that's created for that home, and now we can go through and start actually doing our inspection points. We go, and let's say, I know from my experience and the conversations I've had, a lot of QA managers start by simply going through and going to the master bedroom and working from there. So we'll do the same. We're gonna go to the bedroom, we're gonna load our inspection tasks, everything looks great. Just as a tidbit, all of this is written in React Native and is hosted inside of Palantir. So this is super neat, super cool stuff that we've got going. And let's say we're walking around the house, everything looks good. Everything looks good. Yeah, it looks like this looks fine. So we approve the inspection point, gets written to the ontology. We do that for our AC register, everything's cool. But suddenly we look around and we go, you know what? It seems that that outer wall of our bedroom has a big gash in it. So let's solve that problem real simple. We're gonna go ahead and hit needs attention. It's gonna access my camera. Everyone smile. And we're gonna come over here and we're just gonna take a picture. Real simple. Now that our picture's been taken, we want to be crystal clear. The way I like to think about AI and kind of machine learning is that it's almost like a baby, a child. You have to walk it through all the problems you have real slow. So we go ahead, we circle it. Real simple. There's another reason for this, and it is that sometimes there may be multiple defects within an image. So we want to make sure it's isolating that individual defect. We hit submit. And we are doing magic, as the name implies. I'll go a little bit, obviously, into what doing magic is. It's a little bit more than some hocus pocus, so I'll be sure to go through that. But it's some really neat stuff. So we have a title. It's a drywall crack, vertical crack in the drywall, indicating structural damage. Everything looks awesome. And down here, we have a selection of trade partners that don't appear to be popping up, which is wonderful. It wouldn't be a bug without it. But 99% of the time, this is actually the first time I've ever seen this bug. What I will say is that we are able to select trade partners. So the reason that that's super important for us is very simply, I'm able to link this to the original person who maybe was responsible for drywall in this home, and he can come through and fix it, and we can, obviously bill his hours or whatever is necessary for that to go through. And in some scenarios, for example, a water leak is the most famous example that we use. If you have a water leak on your roof and you start looking around for the problem, it could be a pipe, it could be your roof itself that's leaking, it could be a number of things. So going through and selecting that inside the job tasks is something that really, really would be helpful, because not only are you saying, hey, I have this water stain issue on in my roof that I need corrected, but I need 2 or 3 other people to come out here to find root cause. So once that's done, we go ahead and hit save. We're creating the defect. All that's happening right now is that we're writing it back into the ontology. Again, all of this is being saved live in our application so that we can kind of continue our process. We really want this to be very, very fast and continue our process from beginning to end seamlessly. So now hit continue. As you can see, it's highlighted red now. We have a defect for that. And we can go back now to our home. And here's the cool part. We actually can just generate a PDF using one of the compute modules. And of course, like all good demos, what's happening right now is actually a compute module spinning up. It's going to go ahead and generate a PDF for us, and it's going to have that list of 250 inspection points. It's going to have our error on it. It's going to have some nulls because obviously we haven't done the whole home, but it will also have our successes and everything we've gone through it. So I'm going to give it a second, and I'm sure it will soon pop up because, of course, compute modules, it's not a Lambda function or anything serverless.
And for the problem that we saw before on the LLM, I think one of the nice things that we'll see in the next product launch is how you're thinking about QAing these AI functions. So thinking about evals, and it's basically not a classical true-false testing, but more of statistical and all of that. So we're going to hear about that later in the product launch in the afternoon.
Cool. So as you can see, here's our outer wall. We've listed it as needs attention, and we can see our defect listed with it. We can email this to whoever we need to. We can send this to whoever is more responsible and later down that chain. But that's pretty much it that I have for you guys on this demo. I'd love to get in now into kind of the nitty-gritty of how it functions. So let's review real quick, just so that we have crystal clear guidance on how everything functions. So we've gone, and now our entire job has gone from write stuff down in notes, take a picture, and try and cobble that together near the end. And instead, we have a unified application that writes to the ontology layer, has a slick React Native front end, has an OSDK backend, and everything is hosted inside of Palantir and leverages our ontology so that we can continue to kind of inform the business going forward. So when we first started this application, it was a super interesting application, of course, but we weren't the most proficient Foundry developers ever, as you might imagine. So we started with kind of more of a traditional stack, but we leveraged Foundry as a data warehouse-esque kind of tool. So we had load balancers, Lambda functions, Flasks, Dynamo, you name it, we've probably tried it. And you had to go through and kind of host all of these things independently. And that can be tedious and a lot of overhead. I personally am not a DevOps guy, so you can imagine me having to learn DevOps to kind of get some of this stuff going. We then moved on to a less complex version where we were leveraging the OSDK. Obviously, the people at Palantir assisted in all this process and in kind of our understanding and how we can leverage the ontology and all of the tools that they've built in this platform. And then from there, I'll let our friend take it.
So about 2 weeks ago, we've looked at the app, and it was great. The idea here is really amazing of taking the picture and asking the LLM to give you a description, and then from that description, do an embedding and finding the task. All of that looks really cool. But the tech stack that at least I found was that the React application was using REST commands to talk to a Flask server that was using OSDK to talk to the ontology, which caused two problems. The first one, it wasn't type safe. So in terms of like, the coding and errors between the different layers, there were quite a few. It wasn't very fast because you have to go through like at least 3 hops, like from the React to the Flask, from the Flask to the ontology. And it wasn't that secure because basically the user we were passing the email of the inspector through a header in order to identify who's actually doing the job, which is not the best way. So we said, hey, why don't we just move everything around and get the full power of OSDK and Foundry into this app? So we kind of we used the React client, but instead of doing like a REST calls, we're using the TypeScript SDK directly in React with type safety in OAuth 2. So we're connecting directly to Foundry. So every time the inspector is doing something, we know which Foundry user that user is. The Flask server, we basically did not need that anymore because most of the calls were just going directly from the client. And instead, the 2 calls that you saw, the PDF, and there was another one for email, we moved the same Python code to a compute module. And that compute module was talking to the ontology through the Python SDK. And lastly, we took the app and packaged it and put it on Foundry web hosting, so they didn't need any additional web hosting infrastructure. The end result, as you can see here, is quite a slimmer kind of infrastructure footprint for the app, which makes it much easier for them to manage it, and even from a cost perspective.
Yeah, it's definitely way more slick than where we started out. I definitely concur with that. So I'm going to take you through kind of how the magic happens, right? So pretty simple. We have pulling of our image, and we base64 encode that, obviously, so that LLM, in this case a vision model, can go ahead and read that. So we're going to pass that to our vision model. Our vision model is going to have a pretty robust system prompts. In the current iterations, we've had to manually go through and system prompt. I'm sure in the future there will be almost automated, I like to think, AI ops and system prompting. But for the time being, we manually went through and kind of used a lot of that knowledge that we gained from talking to stakeholders to inform that prompt and make sure that we have a really robust toolkit to get started. So once we have that description, we're also asynchronously getting our job tasks, and we're passing that to an embedding model. The reason we want to do that is because, unfortunately, it didn't work in the demo, but what we would do is we would then take an embedding model and pass it over our description as well. We would then form a cosine similarity and find the nearest neighbors, essentially, of our existing description to our job tasks. And that would give us a list of trade partners that we can then go further down the line and email or whatever we need to do to get them out there to solve these problems for us. All of it works pretty seamlessly, and I'm super happy with how it's functioned. As you guys have all seen, it's a real neat app.
So two notes, if we can go one slide back for a second. It kind of shows you a little bit about optionality that you have when you're implementing such a process. In this case, they've chosen to do cosine similarities themselves. Like it's basically like a function that that does that embedding matching, which is fine for this use case. In other cases, you can just use Foundry KNN search, like nearest neighbor search, built-in function that the ontology provides you. So your ability to jump between different options versus the one that you want or the one that the platform gives you is kind of cool. The second element is, I think that in the future, this whole process could be part of an AAP logic function instead of like writing this yourself in TypeScript. Again, it's not like good or bad. It's more of like, okay, what do you want to play with? What do you want to test? Availability. When they started, we didn't have all the functionality in AAP logic. Now we do have it. So I think having this and maturing your product instead of like making it the way we started is a really good process for them. And I think we're both learning a lot about through that process.
Yeah, I think if ultimately we had some of that logic already built out when we were making this in the first place, we 100% would have just leveraged that. It probably would have simplified my life, as you might imagine. So I'll tell you a little bit about the future of what Lennar and Palantir's partnership means. So we've already started kind of putting our brains together and thinking about maybe we have drones go through some of these communities and kind of do these inspection points maybe on their own. We can maybe feed the floor plans to them and they'll understand how to navigate the home. We have thoughts also, and we actually are starting off a little bit on putting cameras in our communities for security. The reason being that obviously a job site with hundreds of pounds of lumber and all kinds of stuff has its residents of people that come by and take some of that stuff. So we want to make sure that at the bare minimum, we're able to document that stuff, if not have a faster response time to making sure that we lose less product in that world. And then site security and site compliance also comes in. So we want to make sure that OSHA violations are not something that we're constantly getting tagged with. So if we're able to quickly identify that someone on a roof isn't wearing a tether, not only does that bring peace of mind to us, because now I don't have to go and essentially bring someone to a hospital should something ever occur. Now we can quickly say, hey, get the tether on. We saw that there was an error here, and that it's bringing back that you don't have the tether. Please put it on. We don't want an OSHA violation. We don't want to have to pay that fee. So it's super, super impressive what we can do. And we've had some really cool concepts kind of roll through our emerging tech department. I'm super excited to implement those with you guys. But for the time being, I'll open it up for questions and